this evening rather, on the bench. Mohammed, thank you for your time. Grace Bahati is the Member of County Assembly, Cheleni Ward in Machakos County, also joins us on the bench this evening. Grace, thank you. And Philip Pande, Youth Inclusion Advisor, has also joined us this evening here on the bench. Many thanks for your time, ladies and gentlemen. A lot to talk about, starting in Kenya, in Uganda, in Tanzania, and in the world, given, of course, your expertise and wealth of knowledge in the political economy of the world. First, Grace, I begin with you. Your view of what's happening in the region, generally your reflections in Jumuiya, the elections in Tanzania, what's happening in Uganda and also in Kenya.
So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I think I will start today's conversation by expressing deep concern and regret over the escalating situation that's in Tanzania. I read a report by The Guardian that said approximately 700 people are dead in Tanzania. That's really bad, considering that the elections happened on October 29th. So if that is true, then that's around 100 people dead per day, just because of speaking up for themselves. So I think we should look at this with grave concern. If you look at Uganda, we have a very strong armed stronghold government that's there. You can say that suppression there, or dissent rather, is a bit suppressed over there. Yeah. But I urge that as we look at Kenya, let's not sigh in relief, but rather ask ourselves, which direction really are we headed in? I think now is the time for governance that is consolidated, that is youth-powered and youth-centered as well. People who are ready to listen to young people and their grievances. Because when you see young people come out in such a way, it's because they feel they are not being heard, and they feel the only way that they can be heard is by taking to the streets. So I really hope that we can continue to uphold democratic principles, continue to uphold the freedom of speech. The issue of media and internet shutdown in Tanzania is also gravely alarming. Also, I'd like to draw attention to the disappearances of Nicholas Oyo and Bob Njagi. So as we are seeing this rise of transnational activism in the region, it's also coming with a worrying trend of transnational repression. And I think that's more that we can talk about as the show continues. Yeah. But it's time for young people definitely to claim their future, not just because it's promised, but it's something that we actually have to wake up and claim for ourselves.
Yeah, and Mohammed, is transnational activism in the region the medication to what we are seeing as the rise of strong men and women, and also the authoritarian turn that we are witnessing in Jumuiya?
One, Ayub, the whole region becoming more repressive, the whole region becoming more authoritarian, an election victory of about 98%. It's laughable, in all honesty, and it's interesting. Is transnational activism the way or the solution? I doubt it. I think there's things to emulate from across borders in each region. There's things to emulate from what happened in Kenya in 2024. That hasn't just been stuck within the region. It went across the globe in Nepal, in Madagascar, in Bangladesh. All those Gen Z protests. However, I think a lot of the change that the people in Uganda or the people in Tanzania want to see in their country must come from within that country. It must be spoken by the people within that country. We will contribute, people in Uganda will contribute to good causes in Kenya, so will Kenyans to good causes in Tanzania. We'll add our voices to their cries and all of those things. But I think a lot of the solutions that each nation wants to see in their country must come from the people of that nation.
Yeah. And Grace, the African Union just released a statement which is by far very different from the chairperson Mahmoud Ali Yusuf's statement. It says, however, the legal framework's failure to comply with some African Union democratic norms and international standards for democratic elections, non-implementation of recommended reforms from previous election observation missions, the interruption of polling processes in some parts of the country, and internet shutdown on election day and afterwards compromised the integrity of the 2025 Tanzania general elections. No surprise, is it?
Not really. surprised because all along to the people of Tanzania, they've always been voicing how they are not happy with the process of how the opponents have been treated. So when you see the AU coming up with a different statement like that, it just shows how much they were blind all along, pretty much aiding to what currently we are seeing. Because how do you go ahead and imprison the major opponents of the same government? So if they were really interested, because I mean it's AU, we believe that they should be the voice of reason across all the African nations. So with this, it's kind of a slap to the face of the Tanzanians, especially the young people, because these are people who've been always voicing, and it's all there in the social media. They've been there trying to make sure, can we have this be fair, free and fair for everyone, so that we can have a genuine election? Because like my brother here said, 98% of winning, like that's not democracy. There's no single one going to win 98%. So already AU, they're failing us, and even in the eyes of the young people, it's becoming to a point where we do not see the need of AU. Even when we keep on doing the bidding of, the votes and all that, AU is where we are right now. They're not doing justice to Tanzania, and also we are not even sure whether they'll even do justice to Uganda. Even us, as we are coming, the next 18 months will be literally on the ballot. Will they be there as a voice of reason when such things happen? So to be fair enough, this is a slap on the face of Tanzanians and the rest of African countries.
Philip, should the region be concerned with the developments in the aftermath of the Tanzanian elections and what seems to be a very underpinning environment in Uganda that isn't free either ahead of the elections in 2026 rather?
Well, I thank you for having me tonight, and I must say that what's happening in Tanzania is a direct contrary or a contravention to what the African Union is implementing. As we speak today, the Pan-African Youth Forum 2025 is ongoing in Djibouti, and mark you, the theme is reparative justice, the participation of young people in reparative justice. In East Africa, we're talking about repression and standing in the way for the young people. There is this common joke around the East African community that it's quarterfinals Tanzania 2025, semifinals Uganda 2026, and then we're going to have the grand finale in Kenya in 2027. Such talk and such anticipation should tell something to the heads of states in East Africa and should tell the East African community one thing. While the world has made some advancements, and I particularly refer the community to the resolution in 2022 at the General UN Assembly, where they passed the resolution to create the UN Youth Office for the first time in the history of the United Nations. In 2023, subsequently, they appointed Dr. Felipe Paula from Uruguay to occupy that office in the capacity of Assistant Secretary General in charge of youth affairs. So then the UN moved from representing the youth voices from the youth envoices to as an Assistant General Secretary position. Now, come to Africa, then we are looking at the creation of the youth division at the African Union. But at the East African community, we do not have any such thing that mentions the youth at the at the community level and at the departmental level, so that there is no singular department or institution in East Africa and community today that talks about the advancements of the youth, interest, education. We have such a huge crisis, and Uganda and Tanzania should be even more careful. While you talk about a young African continent, 3 of the 10 youngest populations are in East African community, and that's Uganda, that's Somalia, that's Tanzania. So with an average, a median age of about just 17, and with about 52% of the population of of Tanzania being being under 18, there is quite a huge stress on their population. And so is Uganda, which has about 55% of their population under the age of 18. Kenya invests more in education. than Uganda, than Tanzania, than the rest of the East African community members. But look at the challenges that we have here. Tanzania is just number 21 out of the global population, or the global nations in terms of their population size. Hugely young people. If they don't deal with this immediately, it's going to compound. It's going to affect the integration of the East African community. And as we know it, Uganda should be careful, and Kenya should be careful in 2027.
Yeah, and mind you, Nigeria, Egypt, and Ethiopia all account for plus 100 million people. So cumulatively, that's 350 million people we're talking about.
Absolutely.
3 nations alone. But Tatiana, then, should this be worrying to the extent that Foreign Affairs is dead silent about the whereabouts of Nicholas Oyo and Bob Njagi, as well as what happened with Kizza Besigye in 2024, the cross-border abductions with the tacit consent of one respective administration to the other? Beneath the political waters, it seems there is concurrence and correspondence on the part of those in leadership who are nodding their heads in agreement to what's happening, is it?
It's very frightening. I think at the core mandate of having a Ministry of Foreign Affairs, having an embassy in another country, is to protect the interests of your nationals abroad. I always say that that could never happen to an American citizen anywhere. You know, we give the government the power because we expect them to have our backs in return, to look out for us. So in the case where Kenyans have disappeared in Uganda or in Tanzania, like happened in May of this year with Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Tuhaire, and hearing not a word, you know, from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, not a single condemnation, I think it's very worrying. And you know, when we talk about the African Union, when we talk about the EAC, how can we count on these institutions to uphold democracy when the leaders of these institutions, the heads of state in these institutions, seem not to uphold democratic principles themselves? We are literally telling young people every day that democracy in Africa is not a promise, it's a performance. And so when you talk about even low voter registration turnout, the question is, why aren't young people coming to register to vote? The question is actually, why should they believe their vote matters? Because every time we stand up for ourselves, every time we speak out, whether in our own country or in another, there's fierce repercussions for it. So what is going to make us believe that our vote matters, our voice matters? So it's a very worrying trend, and I think young people now, the trend that we are witnessing, especially with youth uprisings, it's people being pushed against a wall and not feeling like they have any other option. And we really have to sympathize with young people. What other option do they really have? Even in Tanzania right now, what is going to happen? We saw Kenyans trying to cross the Namanga border to help. You know, that to me is such a powerful show of people's power and solidarity. People saying, we are sick and tired of having a few people decide for our futures, and we are the majority. You know, if you look at even how leadership is constituted in Kenya today, in Kenya, youth account for over 70% of the population, approximately. I don't even think we reach 10% in government or in public service, you know? So it's not even just about putting young people in power just for the sake of, but having leadership that thinks of young people, that listens to young people when we have something to say, and that doesn't repress young people's voices.
Yeah, and Mohammed, there's certainly a predictable way out of this crisis, especially in our context. It's through the ballot. It's the constitutional mechanism that we can get rid of the leadership that we don't want. Certainly, it wasn't the case, Mohammed. This question to you and Philip and to Grace and to Tatiana as well. It wasn't the case, if you all recall, what Mohamed Bouazizi did in Tunisia and setting himself ablaze, which kick-started the Arab Spring in 2010. But you look at the numbers the IEBC registered in the past few weeks, and it's only paltry 90,000 young Kenyans who have registered. It points to a direction, is it, of having a crisis, but there seems to be stagnation in not moving forward to resolve that crisis.
Yes, Ayub, and sadly so. One, I partly agree with the statement that there's a predictable way out of it, and which is just the ballot. I think the action of that young Tunisian man is also a way out of it. What the people in Nepal did is also a way out of it. What the people of Bangladesh did is also a way out of it. The ballot is probably not the only way out of it. However, that is one of the options that we have. So why are young people not turning up to vote and to take their ballots and to register themselves as voters? I really do not have a definitive answer. I also wonder, but I think it is cumulative of reasons. One, in that people are they've lost hope, really. There's a lot of lost hope that regardless what the outcome will not be one that delivers the decision or what we want out of it. We do not see that this is the way to get the change that we want. Also, there's a lot of activities, there's a lot of civic education that needs to be continuously done before the rollout of the voter registration process is done. That wasn't done as well as it should have been done. IEBC just went and announced that we've started voter registration. Yes, but there's a lot of process and civic education and ensuring. There's a lot of claims that people don't even have the IDs, a prerequisite to register as a voter, that access to their national identification cards aren't being issued as fast and as efficiently as they should be issued. So I think there's multitude of factors of why they are registering those low numbers. Part of it, I think, is a lost hope. I want to try and respond a bit more to the first question that you asked me. And just as Tatiana says, there's a solidarity of the people. But as you also say, there's a solidarity of those in power within Jumuiya. If you see the two preliminary statements, one that came out of SADC and the other one that came out of EAC, SADC calling this election in kind terms a sham. The one from Jumuiya, lackluster, nothing really. It says nothing in 10 or so pages. It says nothing meaningful. So what they are doing, those in power, is that they're helping each other repress dissent and everything else. Kizza Besigye was abducted from the suburbs of Nairobi, of course with the express authority of those in government. A Kenyan and a Ugandan were tortured and left for dead somewhere in Tanzania. But a Tanzanian also, regardless of the efforts of the government to prevent him from attending the funeral of Baba, crossed that border and came. So there's a solidarity of those at the top to try and ensure that they repress those voices. But there's a better and far stronger solidarity of people. So what you're calling transnational activism is indeed solidarity of East Africans people, ensuring that they call out the mistakes of those on the other side and that they add their voice and support to the cries of their fellow East Africans.
Yes, Grace.
Just to expand on that, one of the things, being elected as a young person, that's a win for me. And that's the reason why I keep on telling young people, it's very important for you to come out. Register yourself, make sure those who want to vie for seats, please come out and vie for these seats. Nobody's going to give you this leadership, you know. And I'm so grateful that of last year, the way young people came out to protest and say, you know, enough is enough. We cannot continue with it. That was a one-way, brave enough, even for 2027, for them to come out and say enough is enough with this the voting issue. The reason why they need to understand, as a young person, even in leadership, I've also encountered what the young people are encountering outside the government system. It's the exact same thing I'm also encountering. Even the young people in the system, they're encountering, because you also find a force that is always battling you, because you know you come in here, you're very energetic, you know, you kind of see now this system does not work. This system actually favors those in power. It does not favor those who elected you. And as a young person, you keep on being suppressed. You know, oh, you're too young. Please just take your time, relax. You know, one day you'll get it. You know, this is not how things are done. So for young people, even the ones who are already in the system, we are actually wishing we get more young people who come in of this. We can reason together, that we can join our hands together and look for the system and just try and change the system that always keeps on suppressing us. And just also to expand on that, for us, for the young people I mean, we've heard it, most of the politicians say it outright. It's a way to make us feel no matter. Because don't forget, even our parents are looking up to us, you know, to come out in numbers and help them. You know, they did their part for us to be where we are. And so we cannot give up right now. We have to keep on pushing. So just to, even the issue of just the border, one of the things we have as Kenyans, our, how do you call it? Like our democracy, it's, we are almost breaking through, but there is that system, there's this age gap, or there is this people who have always benefited with suppressing us. And that's the reason why they keep on pushing us. The other thing about our foreign affairs, honestly, if you ask me, and majority of Kenyans can agree, our foreign affairs relationships, it's in the gutter as a nation. Okay. How do we have someone, we call ourselves a democratic country, and yet we have people who are fighting for democracy in their countries being arrested, you know, being abducted actually, and literally transported to other countries. So that's one of the things that the young people, even Kenyans, are seeing and feeling that there is no hope. But as young people, we cannot give up. We cannot give up. We need to come out. I can tell you for a fact, people in the system, they're feeling like, you know, the only strength I have, even for me surviving, is seeing other young people getting to understand. So if I give up in the system, can you imagine people who are outside giving up? So we need to come out in numbers. And also the other thing we need also to consider, we've been told that Wataiba Kura, you know, there are these communities, you know, that will be given IDs. My understanding is this, even us young people, we are not stupid. Why should we come up and register early enough for you to do the math and know how many votes you'll need to steal?
So it's a strategy.
Yeah, it can also be a strategy. I mean, yeah. Because, you know, as young people, we have to think. We have to think. Yeah, so if you're planning to still vote somewhere from 2 million, 3 million, and us young people, we are like 7 million, so we're not going to register right now. We're just waiting for the right time.
No, hamwezi pangwa. Yes, Philip.
Well, I agree with my colleagues, and especially Mheshimiwa here, that the young people must have a strategy, especially in voter registration. Our approach generally to these issues. But that is as far as we go. I think we need to be more intentional in terms of making the decision now to get registered, because the ballot is such a singular opportunity for young people to express themselves, because I say that you might be dissatisfied, you might have you know, the energy online, offline, but you have to really state it at the ballot, because the ballot gives you an opportunity to sack and to appoint new leaders. It's an inevitability that the young people in Africa, East Africa joining, Kenyans have shown the way, and the world is responding to the voices of the young people. And numbers don't lie, Ayub. I believe that the numbers that are there as young people within Kenya, within the East African community, will make a difference. And why the heads of state in East Africa generally should be concerned is that it's a battle in futility, trying to suppress the young voices. This is why. The highest aspiration of the East African community is to have a political federation, a kind of a political union at the apex. As we move towards this, we've laid ground, fertile ground for young people to thrive as much as it is difficult. That with a common higher education area framework, you can come and study with the qualification authority working with the Inter-University Council. Young people in East Africa could roam around and study in Uganda, study in Kenya, study in Arusha, and wherever they go. And there is quite problem since 1967, and more affirmatively since 1999 and 2000, when we had the new treaty for the community signed up. That is not a light issue. It's a fundamental issue for people to analyze, to realize that we've laid ground, we've practiced this, we've opened up our borders. So there is no importation or exportation of bad behavior, but our frameworks have made it such a possibility that we can, you know, cross-pollinate ideas across the border and within these countries. So what has to happen is that we must appreciate the fact that we are moving towards a political collaboration at the apex, whether it's a federation, whether it's a union, whatever it is. So in this process of getting up there, we must realize that our greatest asset in form of the young people must be part and parcel of that equation. If you don't invite them to the table, they will come knocking. And so who unto you?
Mm-hmm. And before I go to Tatiana, still on you, Philip.
Yes.
Zoran Kwame Mamdani is the 111th mayor of New York, born in Uganda.
Yes.
Went to America at the age of 7.
Yes.
34 now.
Yes.
Uganda heads to the polls next year in 2026.
Yes.
Should that be a point of hope for Bobi Wine and whoever challenges Yoweri Kaguta Museveni?
Ayub, like I say, it's an inevitability. The world is young. Global is coming down, at least in the global south in Africa. Statements from, the new, mayor elections in New York and across the world are pointing towards an opportunity that is inclining towards younger people, and you can't take it away. So I believe that Bobi Wine will have his time in Uganda sooner or later. I believe that the next president in Kenya, for example, is going to be younger than, born either in the 70s or in the 80s. And I'll give you a good justification. Look at the ages of our former presidents, for example. Jomo Kenyatta, 1894, I think thereabout. Then you come to Daniel Moi, 1924. You come to Kibaki, 1931. You come to Uhuru, 61. Then Ruto, 66. You realize that nobody is older than the other, at least in terms of generational gapping. So I dare say and predict that the next president of Kenya is going to be born 70 or born 80. It should be even born 90, no problem. But this should tell a statement that you can't shortchange age and time, and that the aggression that the young people are showing, the unity that we are showing within the Kenyan context, within the East African community, is going to catch up with bad laws, it's going to catch up with bad behavior, it's going to catch up with our governance ecosystem. And looking at this even from the aspect of the continental aspirations, the African Youth Charter keeps on projecting the voices of the young people. We are talking about a strategy now for employment for young people between now and 2063. But what are we saying as an East African community? Okay. We do not have a youth-specific strategy. We do not have a youth-specific institution. So what is going to happen is that if the community does not appreciate at the structural level, then there are going to be many amorphous institutions coming up. The youth are going to gather in social justice debates in social media, and they're going to state what the facts are and challenge them.
Yeah. Yes, Tatiana.
Okay.
I want to come back to what you said about EAC coming into a political federation. And to me, the first thing that came to mind was the president of Tanzania, Samia Suluhu Hassan. It's been so obvious how she fears, Kenya and the ideas that are spreading here from, long before what happened. And now we can see why. So I wouldn't see why, the region would be interested in integrating. If anything, I think they are very afraid because as young people, we are learning from one another. And the internet is really helping with that. And speaking of the internet, I also wanted to draw back on the conversation of IEBC and why young people aren't registering, and really highlight that as someone who does a lot of civic education online and have taken the liberty of doing a lot of civic education around voter registration, the misinformation, disinformation out there is a lot. People don't know what to do. People don't know where to go in order to register. People don't have the right information. And I think it's also lacking on the IEBC part. You'll hear there was a popular, misinformation that was going around that voter registration expires on October 29th, the last day of October 30th, 31st. So, you're wondering where is such information coming from, and why is it that creators like myself and my colleagues have to really take on the burden of civic education. And this is work that I've been doing. When bills are introduced, you find out about them either when they've been passed or there's not sufficient civic education that's done surrounding the bill. Bills are released and we are all supposed to somehow speak, legalese. So it's a lot of burden to bear on those of us who are just waking up every morning to try and make Kenya a better place. So when you see also these internet shutdowns in other countries, it doesn't really show me that the region is looking towards integrating, that the region is looking towards sharing ideas. Young people are very disenfranchised in this region, from unemployment to, if you are employed, you're probably underpaid, or you're probably even using your own money to go to work every day. You're not paid, but you're getting experience or an internship or something like that. So even as we blame government for the youth issues in Kenya today, even employers, we need to also just look at ourselves and say, how am I treating the young people in my organization? Am I looking at this person like an adult who is deserving of their own source of income? The other thing I wanted to talk about, and I think Grace has spoken so well and as such an inspiration, is that we also need to be propelling young people into the political space, because every time we are advocating, participating, but when are we actually going to be at the decision-making table? And the way politics is structured, it's hard, and we were congratulating Grace before coming on set today, because it's no mean feat, to get elected into public office, because it's highly around patronage and nepotism and how much money you have and tokenism and all that. So as much as we also try and register, young voters, let's also think about how we can get young people into the political space if we really are going to have the next president of from in the 1990s, for example.
The Senegalese tried with the Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who is now into his mid-40s now. Yes, Mohammed, you earlier on pointed the struggle between the conglomeration of the strongmen and the unity of the people. And in that contest, who do you think will emerge the winner?
I dare predict the future. It's the people, Ayub. It's ultimately the people. It's always the people. It's always the people. It might take longer than anticipated. It might take a few years. It might not happen tomorrow. But ultimately, the will of the people will prevail. Because what the people stand for are the ideals or the grounding of human society. What the people want is a fairer society. What the people want is to be represented equally. What the people want is to be able to send their kids to school. Very simple things, but things which are at the core of humanity and the success that everybody wants out of their lives, out of their countries. So they might be succeeding now in holding Kiza Besigye. They might also be succeeding in holding Nicholas Oyo and Bob Njagi. They might have... Sorry? Yes, Tundu Lissu as well. They might have succeeded in punishing Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Tuhaire. But ultimately, the people will prevail. The people prevailed over Idi Amin. The people will also prevail over Mama. The people prevailed over Daniel Arap Moi. People will prevail over Yoweri Museveni and any other person who tries to take that route.
Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I think for me, when you look at just especially our East African region, to be honest, I think when you look how they operate, all of the leaders, you tend to see they do exchange notes on how to conduct the countries in terms of how to manage the young people. And one of the things they say, the Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And one of the things with the young people, most where we get our knowledge is sharing our ideas, sharing their online and all that. And one of the things that we need to keep on pushing, it's making sure that, we push now the IBC. Because right now, of course, I'm an elected, so these are interactions that we keep on talking with the IBC officers and all that. They keep on saying they do not have a budget to send the officials to go and register people. So you're like, so how are we supposed to register the young people, not even the young people, the people who, you know, they are old enough, but they've never registered as voters. But this time around, they're like, okay, yeah, the reason why we are is because I never voted in 2022, so I need my vote to count come 2027. And this other thing people need to understand, especially the people who are coming from the rural areas, where the offices of IBC are. Some of us need to travel 10, 15 kilometers, 20 kilometers for you to be able to register as a voter. For instance, people from my ward going to where they are supposed to register, they need to spend not less than 1,000 Kenya shillings with this economy. So what does that mean? So most of the time it leaves us, there's the politicians now, to get buses, get to ferry people to go and register as a voter. And because of that, you find, even we keep on saying, you know, 8 million people never came out to vote and all that, and majority of them never registered. These are the issues that now we need to keep on pushing. Why is IBC not given a budget? Is it deliberate? Because, you know, because even if as a politician, as much as I won't be able to register every single person. The most I can do probably is 200 to 300 voters. Yes, that can count, but there are most who we cannot. So how can we bring these offices closer to the people in rural areas? And some of the places, when you consider like places like Mandera, you know, because these places at Turkana, they are so dispersed, the people are so dispersed. So how are those people going to be able to register as voters? Is it a door-to-door? And this is the reason why I usually don't understand. When they are doing, after the 10 years, they do the census. The census, they come door to door. And they take so much time, you know, asking us so many questions. Do you have a boat? You know, do you have a plane? Do you have, you know, let's be honest. But yet, when you are coming to things that do matter as a nation, like registering of voters, it's now for you. You pay for your transport, come all the way, travel 20 kilometers to come and register as a voter. So these are the things that we need to place a priority. And as of now, if you ask me, our current government is not interested. Actually, the lesser the turnout of voters, the better. The lesser the registered voters, the better for them. Because that's how now they can be able, because now, you know, they can only work with what is in their hands. So they already have the numbers of 2022. And so they already know how to play around with. So coming new numbers, now it becomes more trickier for them on how to manage, especially the young people. Yeah,
we'll talk more about local politics in the second half of this broadcast. But Philip, is it concerning the sudden turn of President Samia Suluhu Hassan, seen as a reformist, of course inconsequential as a vice president, before the sudden death of President Joseph Magufuli in 2021, the reforms she promised, and backtracking on the same, jailing the opposition candidates, locking up journalists, shrinking the media space and the civic space as well. It's shocking, is it, given the promise that was so much expected from her?
Indeed shocking, Ayub, and quite a sad turn of events that perhaps leaders that look like promising in terms of bridging the gender gap, leaders that look promising in terms of generational change, and a lot of diversity considered for a head of state, then it turns up this way. But I think there are really a lot of lessons that Mama Samia should pick from how the election in Tanzania has been handled vis-a-vis what has happened elsewhere in Kenya, in Senegal. And I'm glad that you've mentioned President Sarr, who was recently here. Ayub, taking you back, you'll realize that he was actually not elected president at the time of the election. He was in prison and out of his political arrangement. Then after coming out of prison, that's when he got the opportunity to be head of state. What's happening in Tanzania is almost an equivalent of what happened in Senegal in 2022, where opposition leaders were imprisoned. And I think even prior to that, and you know, in just the recent elections, then you have the opposition takeover. So the more you suppress and push people to the wall, the more they become agitated, and the more they want to demand more accountability. Look at history. Jomo Kenyatta became president after coming from prison Nelson Mandela walks out of prison and becomes president. And there are many, many cases, and history is replete of these evidences. So why is it difficult for leaders, a modern day leader today, who has intelligence, who has social media, and who actually can conduct an opinion poll in their living room and realize that they are not as popular as the impression they get from their political advisors and everybody, to do the right thing? So I think it's a sad call, but East Africa has to reform, not just by word, but by deed. Tanzania has to lead the way, and I foresee a post-electoral coalition with the very people that went to prison for this. But I doubt that people should negotiate on the table at a time when elections are not done. I believe that many of these wars, many of these, governance issues can be negotiated, but let them be fixed in law. Let Tanzania, let East Africa follow what Kenya has been doing. Yes, we have our own issues, but you don't see an opposition leader barred from an election. We have our own issues. In 2013, we were at a quagmire when, two candidates who were to be on the ballot were facing, serious issues at the ICC. But within Kenya, our judicial system would still ensure that these individuals are viable so that citizens are able to make their own choices. So East Africa has to emulate that, and Tanzania surely must do that, and we must reform the community.
And Johnny Carson said choices have consequences.
Absolutely.
Tatiana, Mohammed, Grace, and Philip, when we come back, we bring it home. The state father, the institutions, parliament, the silence on Kenyans who are missing in Tanzania, as well as the public impeachment on June 25th, 2024. More, and also the preparations ahead of the polls, plus whether some of the problems that have been itemized by the Young Voices have been substantively addressed. More after the break here on the bench with the Young Voices, who are brimming with confidence and the future they reflect of the country. Here on the broadcast after the break. Stay tuned. Young ladies and two young men on the bench talking about Jumuiya East African Community and the totalitarian turn that is in effect in the region following the conclusion of the elections in Tanzania and the concerns that have been expressed by the latest, the African Union and the SADC community to the south. They are equally concerned about the state of democracy in the region. Tatiana is on my far right, Mohammed next to her, Grace Moshimiwa, and also Philip Pande on my immediate right, and in their esteemed company. Coming back home, Tatiana, Raila Odinga the late has been the constant factor in Kenya's political equation since 1997 when he first contested for the presidency. And he will be, for the first time, absent from the political scene in 2 years when we head to the ballot. How consequential will his absence be?
Very consequential, I think, and for many reasons. For one, I think the presence of the late Baba in the political scene in Kenya also shows us the same point that I was trying to illustrate earlier about, you know, the age of the political scene in Kenya and how that needs to be shifted. But also I recall in 2024 during the protests, we as young people said, we are the opposition now. And I don't think that's...
Namulisema asikuje, isn't it?
Yes, that's what we said. And I don't think that's really changed because I think, you know, before his passing, Baba had aligned very closely with the regime in power. And this caused a lot of people to, you know, it lost him a little bit of popularity on that front. And I think with his passing, we were able to now zoom out and look at his life as a whole, as opposed to just a few, you know, decisions that he made. But with that said, as much as Baba has not only just been the opposition on the ballot for all these years, he has also always been the one to contest elections in the allegation, or where there is a suspicion of electoral malpractice. And now that's going to change. Now we don't know who is going to actually contest election results in the event that people feel they have been cheated. So I feel like that is going to be an interesting thing to watch it play out. But I also think in terms of political alternatives, we are also very disillusioned, especially where it comes to the presidential seat. And that's just my opinion. Right now, I think there are over 10 people who have expressed their interest for presidency. So it's hard for young people to even know which direction they see the country going in terms of the executive office come 2027. And that might also be a contributing factor to the low numbers we are seeing in voter registration. Mine is to say to young people that it's not only about the executive, it's about your MCA, it's about your MP, and you said we'd have the conversation on parliament, but parliament exists to keep the executive in check. And I think in the course of this regime, we've been able to see, the cost of having a parliament that is not independent in its decision making. So these are some of the issues that are there, and I'm very interested in seeing how the political scene is going to play out with the passing of Baba.
Yeah, and Mohammed, other than the politics of it, certainly the political room, when the political situation room will be filled, it will be certainly minus the voice that had always pulled the country back from the brink, is it?
Yes, and especially for a man who always gave up what was rightfully his in a couple of situations and took the back seat, took and accepted the shorter end of the stick, even when all of the odds were in his favor and all of the facts and numbers were in his favor. So I think, yes, that will be missing. And we'll likely see how that pans out after 2027. But I think that gap will not exist for long. I think there are a lot of capable politicians who will fill that gap in their own ways, different styles and all of those things. That vacuum will not exist even until 2027, I strongly think. There are people who are gearing up to fill that vacuum, people who are capable and who will fill that vacuum. Yes.
And how then consequential, the same as I did put to Tatiana, will his absence be?
Very. And as Tatiana, of course, equally says, that there is the absence of a recognizable political alternative, one that the country had known for a long time. An alternative that was known to fight for justice, an alternative that was known to be fighting for what is right in most of the instances, an alternative that was fighting for the common man. That alternative will now be missing. But I think that that the same calls, or at least those ideals, are ones that will continue to advance, that people will make an agenda out of those very ideals, out of the common interest of the people, the economy, working institutions, less corruption, a fairer taxation policy, and all of those things. So I think there'll be an agenda that will be set up. However, there is one thing that will be missing in that political calculations. He was a good enemy, because in an election you need an enemy and you need an agenda. So he was the enemy for a lot of the other politicians on the other side. So in the absence of Raila, the enemy, now we need to make an enemy. We need to say who are we fighting against. In the 2022 elections.
No more bogeyman.
Exactly. Yes. In the 2022 elections, we were given a new enemy, and we were told that our enemy was dynasty. There was an agenda as well, an agenda that is being implemented at the moment, but there was a good enemy. We were sold a good enemy, and the people who sold us that good enemy ultimately won the election. Now we will want to see who the enemy will be in 2027.
And Grace, many political parasites will fall off, right?
Definitely, definitely. Baba was one of that leader that people would love to hate and hated to love, you know, because he was such a voice. Growing up, like the reason, one of the things I keep on saying, if it was not for Baba fighting for democracy, personally I would have not ever won as an independent candidate. These are some of the things that, you know, even us being able to sit here and discuss politics, you know, and call out things even on social media and all that, it's because of what he did. Forgetting him is going to be really, really hard for Baba in the world of politics. Now getting to know how politics works. Like you said, many parasites will fall off, especially those who never had their own backbone. It's going to be really hard to survive the 2027. Baba's legacy in terms of his zeal to fight, his way of, even the way he used to, you know, he would call out and people would come out in numbers, you know, not being paid. It's very hard for a politician to call people without paying them and, you know, coming out. It shows that he resonated with people. He spoke what's inside people's hearts, that most of them were afraid to voice it out. And the reason why we need to get to understand now in coming now to 2027, you've seen Baba, we've rested him, but you know, people they're still mourning him, to be honest. Even personally myself, it's just sinking in, you know. Reason, because I know the impact that will be in 2027. Baba will definitely, he might not be alive, but 2027, he will still play a role. And the role that he will play is not the role of people who will go there and say, you know, from Baba, I need to be voted because, you know, I support Baba and all that. But in our political, because we've always known that it's going to be at the epicenter. That's why you see even right now people are like ODM, you know, the discussions is ODM. You see people are trying to penetrate, or this person must be removed, or this person, you know, is anti-ODM and all that, because they are trying to see how the party will be able to play a role. From where I come from, of course, we've been supporters of Baba a lot. You know, Kambani, like, you know, he has been there with our party leader, Kalonzo Musyoka. So these are the things that, you know, we are looking on how they are going to play, because we've always seen him as part of us. So definitely, we are still yet, I mean, the president also has kept on saying the only person who would have been on the ballot with him is Baba, but yet he does not understand Baba was made by the people. It was not the other way around. So the same people, they'll be able to create their another Baba, you know, and be able to follow. That's one of the things that, you know, we need to get to understand.
Philip, and what role will tribalism play in the next election?
Well, Ayub, I'm really afraid that this election in 2027 is going to be quite tribal, in my view. Perhaps one of the most tribal elections in our recent history, because for far too long, nearly a quarter decade, we've been talking about an election against a particular candidate. Particularly, there is at least half of this country that has always gone to the ballot since 2007 to vote against Baba. Now, for the first time, he's not there. And so if you've been calling his name as a threat, as a perceived or a real enemy, then you have to really go and re-strategize. So that's going to be one of the greatest changes in our political equation, so that we move from the real enemy, the perceived enemy, the scapegoat, to issues. But I don't see us going to issues in the 2027 elections. It's going to be shouting at the highest or the top voices of community balkanization and more of tribal chauvinism on, you know, what do we sell as a region than the agenda, the national agenda. One of the significant things around the right Honorable Raila Odinga's life has always been fighting for a cause. We're talking about multi-partyism, we're talking about devolution, we're talking about equity, we're talking about, you know, diversity and inclusion. We're talking about entrenchment of, say, CDA, for example, and ensuring that that goes to wananchi, just like the devolved funds. So in his absence, and I dare say that I've been a mentee of Baba, may his soul rest in peace. I've had an opportunity to work with him firsthand in the last election, and even after that when he was running for the AUC chairmanship position. His absence would be really felt in the next election. The other reason would be Baba was such a measured man, a moderate person, and he would calm a real storm. He would speak and people would listen to him. And the way I see us speak as Kenyans sometimes is that we lack the voice of reason and we pull the trigger so much. There's going to be a day when, you know, there is no that higher sound. There is nobody that is going to call a press conference in the morning to say stop. And so that has to be a reason for Kenyans to think twice on how we're going to handle the election and how the voting patterns would be. But tribalism has to really stop. The reason we have to stop tribalism is look at devolution. It does not require you to have any form of influence to get the equitable and the equalization, the equitable share of revenue for any county. You only go to the Constitution. The CRA would give you the formula. The Senate would be there to defend devolution. So what is the interest? Why is it that we have to speak as a community so that we are heard? Why don't we talk about the real issues? If it's road network, in which part of this country do we desire more? If it's education, in which part of this country do you desire more? We have things like the equalization fund. We know to who this is supposed to go, to the 20 counties and the net beneficiaries. So why don't we have a predictable election that centers around issues? And you look at the last election, Baba was quite focused on devolution, empowering and strengthening devolution. And he talked about ugatuzi la vijana, ugatuzi la kina mama, ugatuzi la kina, watu wa chini. Everybody with a specific issue that was supposed to be dealt with at the national level. What is the agenda in 2027?
What do you think is going to be the agenda?
We're talking about one term, we're talking about two term. It is going to be the person that shouts loudest that wins, and that is going to be about more tribal balkanization. It's going to be about that person that would have the masterstroke to inherit Baba's support base.
Who can that be in your view?
We have quite a number of options. Some of them are perfect mentees of Baba, very young, born in the 80s, like I say, born in the 70s, born in the 90s. And I think the real issue should be looking at the alternative voices than the current crop of competitors. I think we really need to shift that, and it has to be a radical shift.
Tatiana, whatever the outcome in 2027, it's going to be the last representation of the old political face, isn't it? So what's the future post-2027 for Kenya's young population? All of us seated here. And as Philip points out, then how do we going forward address the problem of tribalism?
It's hard to look at the future beyond 2027, I must say, I think for all of us on this bench. And it's true that 2027 is not a finish line in and of itself. And when we talk about alternatives, I think we've talked a lot about the political alternatives and the power vacuum that's been left. I think there's a need for unity among whatever the opposition is of today, rather than have this fragmented opposition. Even I would dare say as a movement, sometimes we can be very fragmented, very much centered on outbursts rather than playing the long game. I've been trying to crunch my head about why do people write their obituaries before coming out to protest, but they don't want to come out to register to vote. It's that outburst, it's that fragmentation. And so I think young people right now are very interested in value-based and issue-based. Issue-based, yes, but value-based leadership. We just need a consolidated force, you understand, rather than having 1,000,001, options. And I understand that it's still a bit early, and so many of the people that we are hearing today want to come up and take the position, it's very likely that they'll not even be on the ballot in 2027. But I think as we go up to that, let's ask not what these leaders say they will do, but what they have done, you know. And I think it's really giving us a challenge to break out of politics as we know it, to break out of the same faces, the same names that we are so used to seeing, and actually give some fresh voices a chance. As for beyond 2027, it's really hard to say, but I think young people actually have the power to turn the tables around completely. Yeah. It's just, how do we approach that? Do we approach that objectively? You know, we had the former deputy president today telling young people the same. That brings me back to the question of not what have you said you will do, but what have you done before? So as for what's going to happen post-2027, that's very difficult for me to answer, because I feel like the answer to that question lies in what we do leading up to the day.
But you can feel the air is filled with...
Something different is going to happen, something unlike we've ever seen before.
Yes. Mohammed, how ideologically should young Kenyans be in terms of difference to the current political establishment and the elite? What is it that you folks will bring on the table to seek the mandate, which will be in contrast very different from what the likes of our current president and the crop of leadership we have been presenting to the populace for some time now?
I think I take a slightly different position.
Yes, please.
And I want to say, yes, you're asking me what do you need to sell, or what do you need to convince people?
And how different will you be ideologically?
Exactly. I think for any person to come out an outsider, a person who is an outsider as of today, a young person who is an outsider, and to have a chance to win the election in 2027, you have to have extreme views, whatever those views are, or extreme ideals. Let people call them as idealistic as possible. Dream, sell us a future. When they're selling us a resume and they're telling us, this is what I've done before, this is what I have done, this is what I've been doing, sell us, this is what I will do. This is what the future looks like. Sell us that future and let it be as rosy as possible. And I think don't listen to any of how will you achieve them and all of those things. So I think Kenyans and electorates will buy into a very rosy picture. Sell that rosy picture. Secondly, I think that rosy picture has to have a foundation. The foundation needs to be an agenda. Few as much as possible. A max of 3-4 things which could rally a lot of young people around. And I think the economy working, which will ultimately lead to jobs and stuff like that, I think is very important. Something like taxation. I have a big issue with over-taxation and taxation that is not predictable and things like that. So affordability of something like healthcare and education. So I think, number one, sell a rosy picture. Let us dream. We have not dreamt for a long time. We've just been told this is how we do things. We do not want this is how we do things. We want to say this is the future this country needs and this is the future we're going to give you. Have an agenda, max 4-5 things which you can rally people around. If possible, before you get to the election, ostracize as many people as possible. The normal understanding in politics is build coalitions. But I want to say you're coming in as an outsider. Young people are coming into this election as an outsider. Do not build coalitions until after the elections. Ostracize everybody. Get the job done. Then, when it comes to how now do we execute, build coalitions after that, having gotten the upper hand.
Yeah, and will that then address the problem of political baggage and the constant award of incompetence as we had seen with this administration?
If you're coming as an outsider and you're selling us as a rosy picture. You do not have the problem of this political baggage. The people who will have the political baggage are the people who are selling us their resumes, people who are selling us their CVs. Let them deal with that political baggage. If there is anybody to come and sell us a future, it needs to be someone with as minimal political baggage as possible.
Okay. Grace, ideologically, how different are you from the current state of the political establishment?
One of the things when it comes now to when we're looking at the 2027, to be honest, everything we were sold for 2022, it was very rosy. You know, it was very rosy. You know, we are going to be millionaires. You know, we are going to get houses. You know, we're going to get electric bikes. What was the other thing? You know, it was, you know, from bottom up. You know, there were so many things that we were sold at as Kenyans, and people saw, you know, there was a future. We were sold also Singapore. Today we are being sold about Singapore. You know, so there are so many things as Kenyans we've been told. So come 2027, I don't think Kenyans will be, you know, will be dumb enough to repeat the same mistake twice. There's no any politician who will come out here and start selling things that actually they do not exist, because they'll be like, no, we were once here. 2022, but it never happened. So for come 2027, all leaders need to do is be very realistic. And even as right now as you are speaking, any leader who cannot express the joy of the Kenyans, who cannot express the pain of Kenyans, who cannot express and represent their people, because don't forget, us as elected, either as MCA, member of parliament, you know, as senators, they are supposed to defend the electorate, not to defend the executive. And this is the reason why you see most of the counties, there's no development. Why? And I'm sorry to say this, we also have some young people in our county government, you know, but they've already been subjected, or rather they've chosen, because I keep on telling even young people, it's not about being young that will be elected. Also your character will come into place. Because, you know, you cannot be bought, or the cases that we've had even in the parliament. I mean, we also have young MPs, you know. Have we heard their voices speaking on behalf of us as the young people? Have we heard their voices speaking on behalf of the electorates or Kenyans? So these are the things that come 2027 you need to come and look up to. It will not be just about age. Now we'll be looking, are you able to speak for the people? Because, you know, there are separations of powers. When it comes to the members of parliament, they cannot be defending the government. They cannot defend the executive. The executive is the president, the deputy president, and the CSSs. Those are the executive. When it comes to the county government, MCAs, they are not allowed to defend the governor. They are not allowed to defend the deputy governor. They are not allowed to defend the waziris in the counties. As if you elect as a member of county assembly or a member of parliament, it's your and senator, it's your work to defend the people. But what currently as a country we are going through, we've elected people who are actually in bed with the same oppressors that, you know, they are not. And even right now we've been seeing, you know, the government will be coming and say, oh, this area you are not part of us, you know, you never voted for us, so we are not going to do development for you. Or even you hear the governors, I mean, a classic case we had, you know, a governor saying, mkichagua mtu ambaye si wetu atuwafanyii kazi. So those are some of the things that comes into place, and we are like, come 2027, we cannot have leaders who are blaming other leaders. Okay. We need to hear leaders who are actually representing the people. Until that time as Kenyans, we'll be able to see, yes, this person defends me. That's the time as a country we'll be able to see our leadership system change.
Yeah. And time for blame game is over, is it, as we head into 2027, Philip?
Sure it is. And I believe that we all have an opportunity, Ayub, to contribute into developing this country. Tatiana says that it's difficult to think beyond 2027. I believe one of the most fundamental things we have to do is think of Kenya beyond 2027.
Do you see the promised land?
I see it every day. And Ayub, I was just looking at my calendar, and my countdown shows me that it's about 643 days to the next election. And I'm confident that that election would change this country, would transform this country, would have more young people into the spaces, ask us about the philosophy, ask us about the ideology and the difference we want to make. I keep insisting, Ayub, that there is nobody that has contributed more than the young people of Kenya have contributed into developing this country. We talk about cessation of paper 10. Tom Mboya and Kibaki, aged 33 and 31, gave us a document that helped plan this country until at least 2008 when we had the Vision 2030 come in. Now, the Vision 2030 is expiring in under 5 years. We're implementing the last medium-term plan 4. If you listen to the president speak at the Right Honorable Raila Odinga's funeral, he says that the Prime Minister was more concerned about how to leapfrog Kenya from, a third world nation, a newly economy into what we're calling a modern world or a first world economy. And what this means is that just like we have the Socio-Economic Council established by the NAC government to come up with the Vision 2030, the Prime Minister was going to chair a Socio-Economic Council to help us transform Kenya beyond the Vision 2030. So what have we to do? Is that the young people with our creativity, Kenyans uniting for development, for a more prosperous future, must talk about planning post Vision 2030. And so that the president, as a legacy to the former Prime Minister, must establish that council. And I know that plans are underway to help have a succession plan in the event of planning for development. That is where we have to concentrate, so that much as we've had very difficult times building Kenya, making Kenya make sense to everyone, I believe that a plan such as the Vision 2030 that is more looking into the future, that is looking at education, skills development for young people, that is looking at labor policies and labor migration laws that are more friendly to our people, then would establish a young Kenyan to be more successful and more competitive in the global stage. And this is why we have to give priority to digitization, to labor mobility, and to young people moving across the globe. Because we've talked about an African population that is going to be at least 30% of the global labor market, or contributing at least 30% of the global wage or workforce. How are we able to ensure that Kenyans today, we talk about the Silicon Savannah, we talk about an enterprising population that is already transforming the world. How do we send that population to influence the world to solve local problems? And how do we successfully ensure that everybody becomes part of the discussion and not just a political elite?
Yeah. Before we sample the yes, Mohammed.
If I could add a little bit to that. Philip raises a very good valid point of who is thinking for Kenya beyond 2030. Vision 2030 is coming to expire. I want to be a bit very hopeful and to report to you that recently I took part in a discussion of Kenyans, cross-cut from a cross-section, who were thinking for Kenya 2063.
Yes.
This team of Kenyans sat down. Very impressive. One of the most impressive things and they were planning and thinking about what will Kenya be when it turns 100 years old. And they were examining 4 different situations. 1, will Kenya be a triumphant story when it turns 100 years old? Will Kenya be one of an ascendant Kenya when it turns 100 years old? Will Kenya be a stagnant Kenya when it turns 100 years old? Or will Kenya, God forbid, be imploding when it turns 100 years old? And I want to say that if those discussions keep going on, and I can confirm that they'll keep going on ultimately until we have a Kenya Vision 2063, that Kenya will probably be a very triumphant country if we keep those discussions and asking ourselves, what are we doing wrong? What could we improve? What is the future like? What are we aspiring? What are our young people wanting? And how do we move this country? So I think there is a good section of Kenyans who are thinking for Kenya.
Yeah, and Tatiana, it takes bold leadership, is it, to get there, to get it done. And Singapore has been quite a good example. But who today in Kenya's political arena has, let's say, 30 to 40% of the attributes of Lee Kuan Yew, who developed Singapore?
Yeah, that's a difficult question to ask, and I think it brings us back to the conversation we were having about painting rosy pictures and forming, I wouldn't want to call it coalitions, but to say that there's a necessity to consolidate. And I think I'm not the one to say, but Kenyans are the ones to say in the end. And it's very hard for Kenyans to make a decision with maybe 12, 13 people on the ballot, all going for the same position. The issue with painting a rosy picture is that, as Grace so well put it, we've been there before. As Kenyans, we are not new to lies from the political class. So I think it's important that as we try and answer that question, who in the political space is going to, take Kenya forward? It's important to look at issues, the way you said it, and values as well. And as we look forward of 2027 and even forward of 2063, one thing remains for certain, that without empowering young people, without placing young people at the center of policy making, then we are letting ourselves down as a nation. Because young people are our biggest resource at the moment. We are very active, very clever. I don't think, I think this is the first time in the history of the world that we've had the same access to information, that we have, the same sharing of ideas. And with that comes a lot of energy that has nowhere to go. And that's why you find people wanting to cross over to Tanzania to help them with Mandamano, because they have that energy and nothing, to do with it. Have you ever gone to town on any given weekday? Just see the amount of people seated at archives, just seated there, really not much they are doing. So if a protest erupts in town, they are going to be there because they have nowhere to channel their energy, their frustration. Similarly, there's no one that young people can easily say they want to rally behind. So I think there is a lot to be done in terms of organizing. We need to figure out, what are people on the ground saying? What do people on the ground want? And who is it that can actually represent our interests? But with that said, I want to also divert that attention from just talking about the president and from the executive as well, and just say that who we elect matters at every stage, whether it's your women's rep, whether it's your MCA, whether it's your MP, who you elect matters at every stage. And we need to think about it that way as well.
So let's sample the feedback and see what Kenyans are saying as well, who have been part of this conversation.
Can I defend the rosy picture in 1 minute?
Yeah,
in 1 minute. Yes. Thank you very much.
In that case, I also have to say something.
Everyone has and will. Yes. But Grace will be prioritized. Yes.
Thank you very much. One, my idea of this rosy picture does not equate to lies. It doesn't say sell the people extreme lies that you cannot implement. A rosy picture, let's say, that was sold to us in 2022 could be affordable housing. What we young people need to understand is elections must be won. We might be very idealistic and everything else, but elections must be won. So those rosy pictures which we were sold in 2022 won an election. Some of those rosy pictures, when those positions became untenable, the administration could abandon them. It's okay, it's the art of politics. But the first part of an election is to win it. So regardless, young people, we must win an election. Do everything possible, win the damn election. And then after that, if some positions become untenable, re-strategize. Get back to the drawing table, go back to your coalition, and then move from those positions which are untenable. But sell the people a future. Sell the people a dream. Kenyans want to dream. They want to dream of a Kenya that works for every Kenyan.
Yes, Grace.
One of the questions is, they said like anyone who, out of the aspirants who want to run for 2027 for the presidential level, one of the things we need to come, before we even talk about the presidential level, we need to start, like Tatiana said, every leader out of the 6 ballots, they do matter. They do matter. So even as we go there, it's very important, even as us as young people and Kenyans, to understand the roles of each and every ballot that you are going to vote for, so that you don't get on blaming, oh, so-and-so is not delivering, yet then they are doing their work. It's just another certain leader who's not actually doing their part. So that being number one, get the roles of all the leaders we are getting to elect. Out of the 13 leaders, let's not keep on saying, I want to defend my friend here said, the crop of leaders who have come out. It will be very not nice. That's the same sentiments we had from the president, saying, wale watu wa opposition wana akili. Those are statements that, you know, you kind of wonder, because these are people who have actually, they're leaders who have followers, you know, and it's very important that we get to know, yes, they'll bring their candidate as a party of ODM, and also on our part, like I'll say for Wiper Party, we have our own presidential candidate, so and the other parties and all that. So it's for Kenyans to come and understand who actually represents them, who actually has their ideal, their ideal Kenya. How do they want to see Kenya in the next 5 years before 2032 appears? And every single Kenya will be given the opportunity at the ballot to pick who because we cannot keep on saying one term. Yes, it's one term for those who are saying one term, it's 2 term for those who are saying 2 term. But if the ones for the 1 term, you have an option to vote for who you feel like this person represents me. So that 2027, people don't can say, there were never options. Yeah, definitely we'll have options for 2027.
Okay, so let's see what Kenyans are saying on Twitter. Engineer Lazaro says youth's place voting card has power to hire or fire bad leaders. The only constitutional way of sending dictators packing is by voting them out. Please turn out and register as voters in large numbers. We explored that. Mbugwa says for us to be safe in our country, we must be part of the change that we want. We will contest for those positions and bring the change that we want. Young people will not be humiliated or blackmailed going forward. We have the numbers and strategies to change Africa for a better living. Ian says, Mheshimiwa is right. We are not stupid and we are also playing our cards too. Honestly, the system is shaking. They might act like they don't care about the movements of the youth, but watch the parliamentary team, the bills. Orutwasam says, let the young people know that we can't bring any changes in leadership if we let people who are less informed do elections for us while the educated are very busy to elect credible people into authority, because it's what determines success. Wanjiru says it's more than protest, it's now online civic language. Digital solidarity crosses borders fast, memes move minds, and hashtags spark hope. Gen Z solidarity / advocacy hold and leaders accountable. And Danata says what Mohammed has said might be changed during the December holiday. Many will go for registration since the highest population of those who are living in towns and Gen Zs are millennials who will not risk to stay in towns during the voting period. We got you. RM_Kiberenge says in Africa there is no difference between elections and military or civilian coups, because in practice both of them produce the same outcomes. In both cases power is grabbed by force and there is bloodshed. Dennis says, I tell African rising youth that the future is in their hands. Shape it in such a way that you will put a smile on your face days to come. Dennis again says, I tell the African rising youth, I think this is a repeat of the same. Monica, we move on. Yes, Ras says, at Grace Bahati, you are doing good representing young people and leading Mwananchi in Machakos County. So that is appreciation there. Jethro says, why are children against their leaders or parents in politics? Which country do we have young people in high offices and old at home, or wherever please, young generation? Our president is relatively young. So, well, you can respond to that?
Yeah. And that's the thing I keep on saying, you know, it's not about someone who's young. It's about the character of that individual. We have young people in leadership, you know, and when you interact with them, you can actually tell they do not care about our fellow young people. It's what they get for the bag. It's for the bag for them. It's not about developing our country. We can have even someone in the 90s, even someone, I know none of us can be voted for, you know, as a president. But do we have what it takes to lead a nation? So it's not about being youthful. And this, I think, even young people, as we go to the ballot, it will not you'll not be voted for your age. Even our voters, our own parents, they will judge us. Is this person able to lead us as an MCA? Is this person able to lead us as an MP? Is this person able to lead us as a senator? So it's not about, because of course, like he said, our president is young, but everyone right now is complaining.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Ayub, if I may. While I think that representation does matter, it matters if you have young people in government, and I always say this, and I've said it before, it's not really about counting young people, but about making young people count. And by having young people that count, their voices count. But it's also about those who are in power having policies, having ideologies that actually support young people, that place young people at the center of everything. Because we account for majority of the population. And without sufficient investment and without sufficient opportunities in our way, then, you know, we run the risk of losing out on the tremendous potential that Kenya has.
Yes.
Maybe to add, Ayub, and I'll respond to Jethro, that talking about, like I began saying, we're talking about reparative justice, and especially on youth inclusion and youth engagement. So why is it so that in the independence cabinet, we had about 30% composed of young people under the age of 35? Why do we have, at 2007, 2008, young people under the age of 35 making it to cabinet? And while we had the, perhaps the most difficult stretch and intense pressure from the young population, then we don't include them at the cabinet level. And most recently, we only have one young PS at the under 35 included among over 60 principal secretaries. Why is it that IBC, for example, had a very unique opportunity to make one of the commissioners, the selection panel, had an opportunity to make one Chacha from Korea, who has been a volunteer, young person working for the commission over, the last period of 3 years or so.
But the whole body's vice chairperson is also Rikayet.
Relatively, we'd say. But a commissioner that was significantly the representation and the voice of the youth missed the opportunity. So what are we saying? That in reforming institutions, that in planning for this country, that in being more inclusive, we must dare listen to the voices of young people. And that is not by chance. It's by the fact that we want to be more intentional in decision making. We want to be more intentional in planning for the very young people.
Moses says the young generation also get things given to them easily, and yet their ID cards are not being collected from registration centers. How can they register as voters? How true is this?
I'll allow Grace to go first.
Being on the ground, one of the issues we've had, first the IDs were really delayed. So to a point that, there were a couple of weeks. I mean, my name is we hear even the communications from the administration, so to speak, assistant chiefs and the chiefs, So once you delay a young person, because most of them probably they even had to go to school, they had to go and look for other, because they will not just sit in the house and wait for IDs for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, surely. So we hope that during this season, holiday season, like just one of the commenters said, that now they'll be able to pick their IDs and they'll be able to register. One of my nephews actually did apply for the ID, and that was like, 3 months ago, and yet the ID is not yet out. So even from just in my own in-house, I can tell there have been delays. So even these issues, maybe right now is when they've come, but there've been a delay for that.
Okay. Mine is just to say, let's not always point the finger at young people, but actually talk about what are some of the barriers that young people are facing. Because without an ID, it's not even just about registering to vote. There is so much that you cannot do as an ID. As you don't even exist as a Kenyan if you're an adult without an ID. And there's actually a lot of documentation going on by civil society organizations, and even Grace can maybe even take the initiative to amplify further the discrepancies around ID applications, collection, dispatch. There's a lot of discrepancies around that, and we need to have that conversation just as seriously as we take the conversation of voter registration.
The next is from Mukhtar Khalif, Wajir County. Says, 1, how comes the youth are yet to register as voters, or they are waiting for politicians to seduce them to register? 2, you think we can have a political party for Kenyan youth which engulfs all and sundry? 3, do you think the youth can erase the syndromes of tribe and forge United National Youth Forum to take over governance? Mohammed. 3 questions in one.
Okay. So how comes the youth are yet
Waiting for
register?
politicians to seduce you to register?
I don't think young people are waiting for anyone to seduce them to register. They're just waiting for, one, the necessary documentation to come from the national government, that is registration services, for them to get their IDs, and then they'll turn up and vote. They also expect to be civically educated about the importance of voting, the importance of getting their voter's card, the importance of going out to the ballot, the importance of the whole electoral process. So they want a bit more civic education and access to those documents.
Can there be a political party for the youth?
There can be. I would not propose it. I do not think it's a decent idea. Get a party that can speak to everyone. You want voters from every cross-section of society. So let's just have an agenda. Let's have an understanding of what we are standing up for. The party is just a tool.
Yeah. Question number 3 was the main on which you addressed. Do you think, Grace, this is to you, the youth can do away with syndromes of tribe and forge a united front?
One of the things I love about us as our now current youth, we are not, like we say, we are tribeless. That's one of the things that I'm actually very grateful, because I've never been a place where, I've been judged of where I come from. The only thing I know, and I'll be very honest, our country, we are very, when it comes to votes, we are very regional. I would say tribal, we are very regional, and that's why you hear politics ni hesabu, like it's about the numbers, and that's why you'll hear their coalitions. You'll hear let's say Party A and Party B. Let's give you an example. Now we have ODM and UDA. They're in they're working together. Now you'll see that we have Wiper. You'll see we have DCP, DAP. All of that coming together, because the reality is you can never win an election as an individual party. Yes, you can win. I mean, UDA won as a party, but yet it had to do coalition with other leaders from other regions. So it's not about tribe, it's about the regional now.